Hello there, I'm Zoe Kirk-Robinson. I'm a cartoonist and I do a lot of comics on the internet. I actually produce 3 comics every week, The Life of Naughty Mouse, All of the House and Inkproof Cannon. And what I'm going to do today is show you how I sketch, ink, colour and letter my comics so that you can get an idea and be able to do it yourself. Okay, the setup for the comics is fairly straightforward. We have the main computer here, which we'll be running Photoshop on in a moment, and underneath my diary here we have a graphics tablet. It's a Wacom Intuos 4, which is pretty good for what we're doing because it gives us a lot of control. It's got some buttons on the side that unfortunately don't properly work in Linux, so I have to use the keyboard instead, which is down here, and actually has very few visible letters left on it because it's quite old and I wear it out. You'll notice from that it's Norwegian rather than English, but we use it anyway. And this is the MacBook that I use to basically for Skyping people during the day while I'm working on comics and for watching videos and things like that. Basically keeping myself from being bored. So let's load up Photoshop and we'll get started. Because I'm running Ubuntu, it looks a bit different to standard computer setups, but we've got Photoshop 7 running on Wine and it works really well for comics. So one of the things I would recommend is if you do want to start doing comics and you want to deal with Photoshop, you don't have to buy the latest thing and constantly upgrade. Once you've got a copy that works for you, just keep with it. Yeah, Photoshop 7. This came out when I was a student the first time around while I was still at Durham University, and I've used it ever since because it does everything I need to, because I can draw a line and I can colour in the line, and that's all we need. Okay, we're going to start by bringing up the template for the comics. I have saved certain styles of frames and I use them as a basis for each of the comics, so I don't have to spend time every day drawing new comics with frames and making sure that the frames line up and things like that. I've already worked out what we're going to write because I keep notes of conversations and discussions and sometimes record the conversations themselves so that I have a record of what we actually want on each comic. This means that Jen doesn't have to be here when I actually do the comics, so we're going to just use the notes to write out the dialogue. We try to set it out so that each speech bubble will take up a little bit of the top of the frame. So basically the top third of any frame can be filled by speech bubbles, and that'll be alright for the comic. If you go over that, then you've got too many words on your frame and it's going to take away from the artwork. You're actually going to have too little space to draw anything on your frame. So what we do is we say, right, the first third of a frame you can put words in there and that's alright. If you go over that, it's got to be for a joke. You've got to basically try and flood the frame and then perhaps in the corner have someone being weighed under by all the text. Otherwise, you're not making a joke, you're not making it visually quite funny, you're just filling it with text. You're writing a story, essentially, rather than a comic. And that's not what you want to do. We can make that a bit better, a bit snappier, so we'll do that. Emphasis there. By boarding a couple of words, we're adding emphasis, which is always useful. And that's it. We've got a few lines of dialogue for setup, and then we're building up to the punchline, and then we have the punchline. That's all we need. We don't need to flood it with text. We've just got the bare basics so that people will read it, laugh, and then they'll all be happy. Now we get to draw the actual comic itself, and I'm going to do that by sketching out before we do anything else. First, we save. Save every step of the way, otherwise you're going to lose something through an accident at least once, and that's the last thing you want. Okay, comic number 608. I've numbered every comic so we can find them easily and they're all in the right order. It's something you might want to consider. I didn't at first, and it took me a while to go back through and number everything, but we did it. It just means that I know exactly where I am at any point and how many we've done. Right, now that that's set up, I'm going to move everything into these folders so I can turn off the speech with one click. But we're not going to do that just yet because we need to know where all the speech is when we sketch. Okay, when it comes to sketching, the first thing you want to do is remember that doesn't have to be picture perfect. We're getting a basic idea of the shapes, and then we'll go from those shapes into the actual inking. Sketching isn't the finished product. Okay, now we have Tesrin looking slightly concerned because she's saying he's going to buy cursed paint, so of course she's going to be quite concerned. I'm just drawing the hair. Most of this will disappear in the actual drawing, and then we basic shapes to get the body right. Okay, save that again because I don't want her to draw it twice. Now, she's watching Emily on the computer, so we're going to see Emily from the back. It's not the kind of drawing that I prefer to do because I prefer to have faces where people talk to each other and you actually see them, but in this circumstance I think it's appropriate that we see the screen and the back of Emily rather than her talking to Tesrin. So, because she's going to be there, we'll have the hairstyle. And the screen will be there. One thing I love about the Wacom is the ability to just flip the pen over and rub things out, so I don't have to keep fiddling with the toolbars. And let's get Emily drawn now. I'm going to hairstyle. She's at a computer, she'll have her hand down on the seat that she's on. The perspective, so we curve the edges of the seat down. Like that. And there we have it. That's basically all we need to do for panel 1. Add a little bit of the keyboard. Let's put a little bit of the keyboard in so get an idea of the size of the computer itself. It's not necessary because we could just say it was behind it, but I like to add in a few little bits here and there. And because I know that there is a picture on the wall near the computer, we're going to put that in as well as the back. so that the entire place is laid out as we know it should be. And it gives a sense of continuity. Now regular readers will know, oh, they're in the lounge because we've seen the lounge many times before. Okay, now for these two, things are a bit different. We've got a guy painting a fence, and that's all we've got for this one. So we're going to have a close-up on the fence because I don't want to reveal everything straight away. So here we go. There's a few bits of broken wood, which gives us a chance to draw something a bit different to what we'd normally do. Because we need to show that it is wood, we'll have a few wood effect lines on it. And another piece that's a bit shorter. Just to give a bit of variety, basically. Not to look like a wood, so there we are. Now he is painting it, so we're going to have there, and then a few drops that are coming down. Basic stuff to make it obvious that this is a work in progress and the paint is wet. Just a few wave lines. Now we need to draw the brush itself. I'm going to do that on a different layer first of all so I can get it right. So we're going to reduce the opacity of this one so I can draw over it better. And then we need a square look for the brush. Again, it's all basic shit, very, very basic idea. I'm not trying to draw a picture-perfect impression of a paintbrush or some wood. We're giving an impression, and because it is covered in paint, we're going to now put a load of stuff over the top like that. So this will slop around like it's got liquid all over it. There we are, and we're going to have drips off that as well. And then just a little bit of detailing onto the brush itself, just because otherwise it's going to be bare colour when we do it, and that's not what we want. When he's holding it, it'll be like that. So we'll have a part of a thumb and part of the hand, and then it'll come around like that. And there's your hand. Pull out these bits here. And that's it, that's all we need. Now, we'll go back to the original sketch and we can rub out the bits that are going to be underneath the paintbrush, just so that we don't have too many lines and I get confused. The last thing I want is to be drawn all the lines in and then find, oh, we didn't need all those lines, and then having to rub them all out on the main inking, because the sketch, we can make a mess while rubbing things out. That's perfectly fine. You're welcome to make as many problem messes as you want on a sketch, because it's not what the people who are looking at the comic will eventually see. But when it comes to the actual thing, you want to make it as good as you can. So bring the opacity back up. There we are, one finished sketch there for panel 2. We'll merge those two ink layers together, and then we can draw the background in. The background is going to just be pretty much flat wasteland with a few rolling hills in the background. Basically a standard flat wasteland that I draw. A few little markers here and there to show that the land is parched, and that's all we need. Okay, panel 3. Panel 3 now has, because of the punchline that we're setting up, now has to have someone, or at least one person, probably two, standing next to what we've just painted, which looks like a fence from panel 2, but we'll see where it actually is now. So, we have two pieces of wood stood in the middle of nowhere, so let's quickly draw them based on what we've got in panel 2. Okay. Again, very, very simple, because the artistic quality of the wood isn't the joke. There we are, we have an impression of some wood. we're going to bury them in dirt. So there we are. Oh no, because they're going to be fully painted by this point, so we don't need to draw the paint lines on. Right, so that's that. And again, because we want to be able to go over them, we're going to now put in another layer, reducing opacity on this one, so that I can draw over the top without problems. And we need 2 people. We don't know what those people look like, we've never drawn them before, so I'm just going to draw 2 generic people. And they're going to be quite surprised. So what kind of hair? Just have... We'll do some curly hair because it's easy to draw. And he's really happy. So big mouth with a curve to show that he's happy. No, I don't want to draw him in a shirt because he's just been painting, so t-shirt, and that will work out nicely for someone who's been painting on it. Maybe we'll draw some paint on him, and maybe he's still holding the brush. That one. Yeah, if we still have him holding the brush, it'll be obvious that he's the guy who's been painting. There we are. So he's the painter. Just a quick hand to finish him off. A few lines on his t-shirt. So let's have... Yeah, now we don't have to draw paint splashes on his t-shirt, so he can still have clean clothes. And the other guy he's talking to, I think he should be looking up at the sky, because we're going to draw rain in a moment. But he's happy to draw a standard haircut for him. And he can have a t-shirt too. F-R-M-R. Just as a generic way of writing farmer quickly on his t-shirt. I like doing little visual gags like that. So he's a modern farmer, he's going for initials. And that's all we'd need. When we finish drawing it, we put it in the background like that. And it's clearly at the same place, but there's nothing on the ground. It's all basically it's desert land, and they're anyway. So, because we didn't draw over anything, we don't need to delete anything from that sketch. But it's good that we did it on a different layer in case we had one of them go over the top. So, now we have the sketch, we just need to draw in some examples of rain, which we're doing on the same layer actually. And rain is very easy, just a few dashing lines like that. And a few little splash marks here and there on the people and the objects in the background. That way it looks like rain is actually dropping rather than just pouring down in front of them. It's very quick, very simple, and it's amazing what you can do with a few little lines here and there. Now all we've got to do now is remove the speech bubble there, so by turning it off. We haven't deleted it, we just turned it invisible for the moment, and we'll reduce the opacity of the sketch layer so that we can actually start drawing off the top with ink. Now when it comes to inking, what we need is to make the front characters stand out from the background, and we do that by using a much larger inking brush than we do with the background. So we're going to use a 19-point brush for the outside of the characters. And once we've done that, once we've got the characters outlined, what we'll do is like this. We'd outline them like that, and then you fill in the details with a thinner brush, like a number 9, and that gives you an awful lot of difference between the outline, which makes them stand out, and the detailing, which is finer and lets you do more of it without taking up too much room and making it basically just a series of thick black lines. Because the last thing we need is lots of thick black lines. It detracts from the image. The background, however, will be in a much smaller brush, because that way we get a bit of difference between the background and foreground. So before we start inking, we have to zoom in. I generally zoom in to about 200%. Some people go further. It depends on how big the picture is that you're drawing from and how steady your hand is. I draw really big. This frame will, these 3 panels here, will fit on an A4 sheet of paper, but only just. And sometimes, depending on the way that you've set them out, they may have to actually be reduced a little bit to fit on. So it's a very large image, and as a result I don't have to zoom in too much to get a good line, because it all gets reduced when you see it on the computer or when it's printed. So we're going to zoom into 200. I know where the lines are, so we're just going to ink them in. An outline with thick 19-point black, and we've gone out of the line, so never be scared to press Ctrl Z. And we just go around the outside. We're not doing the detail just yet, we're just getting the characters laid out on the screen. Because we've got the sketching already done, we can draw in confidently, which is why we do the sketches. We know where everything is and where it would be on the picture, so just like that. Confident strokes, and there is one character outlined. There we are. She looks alright, so we'll draw on the other one. I like to zoom in and out just to check how it's going, because you can adjust things quicker if you know there's a problem early on than when you find out later. The worst experience you can ever have is basically getting through the entire thing and realising that you've done something wrong fundamentally and you've got to redo an entire frame. Actually no, the worst thing isn't that. The worst thing that can ever happen is you find out that you've accidentally saved over something you wanted to keep. I did that one time with a comic where I had accidentally saved right over the top of my actual drawing with a 600 pixel wide thumbnail copy for the website. So I'd have to do the entire thing all over again. And that was annoying, and I found out after I closed the thing, so I couldn't just do undo. Right, now we've gone with the outlines. We've got both characters outlined very nicely. So we're going to zoom back in, and using a 9-point brush this time, so it's significantly smaller, we're going to draw in the detail. And again, it's confident sweeps because we already know where everything is. And we just get rid of the little bits of extra there so it looks nice. And just like that, we have the first character drawn. So it's not gone too bad. Now, we've got here the chair, and I've decided that the chair is actually part of the background, but because it's in the foreground part of the character, I'm going to use the detailing brush size rather than the background brush size for it, so we're going to draw that in now. And it'll make it stand out a bit nicer and look a bit more appropriate for someone who's sitting in the foreground rather than part of the furniture. But we're going to do the detail for it in background detail size, not background font size. So there we are, and it's very simple. So we'll go back to proper character detail brush size, and we'll fill in all the bits on Emily. Because she's just from the back, it's very quick, and that's pretty much it. There we are, now she's done, and that looks okay. So go down to 0.5 size brush, because it's background detail and we don't want it to obscure the foreground, so we use it a bit smaller, and then computer. And that's all we need to do for that. And oh no, it isn't. Spoke too soon. Still got to draw in the picture at the top. Wouldn't be the first time I've completely forgotten to draw something and had to go back. But again, that's why we zoom out to check, I suppose. Oh, we've still got it on all lines. We fill in that. That just makes it a bit quicker, and then we colour in the anti-alias lines, so that's all thick black for the eyes on the picture. So some people will colour that in the background layer, since it's part of the background, but I like to make sure that the eyeballs are thick. There we go. And that's the first frame inked in already. We could start colouring that, but we're going to ink everything else in and then colour all at once. But that's the basics of inking. It's fairly straightforward because the sketch is already made out where everything is, so we can just quickly go over the lines. And we do the same thing again on this one. The brush is in the foreground, so it gets the thick lines. And confident strokes again, just to get everything sorted out quick. Out one brush and down to 9 points for doing the actual detail work again. So we're going to look liquidy, so put in a few liquid lines, and that's the side of the brush, so brush detailing on get the impression that it's got bristles and isn't just one big chunk. Draw a thumbnail as well there. Don't have to. Most of the time I don't draw fingernails or anything like that, but today we're going to extra details on the top of the brush. That's too thick a line. Don't want it to look odd compared to the rest. And there we are. Brush is done, and now we go on to the rest. Again, we want this wood to stand out compared to the rest of the background, so we're going to use the foreground detail brush thickness. You don't have to, but I do think that it works out an awful lot better if you do, because although it is technically part of the background, it does affect the foreground because we're painting onto it. So it's worth considering these things when you're putting your frames together. I think it'll work out alright, so okay. Oops, Control Z. Actually, we'll just do that. Okay, let's zoom out and see what we've got. Yeah, because now we can see that this stands out better than the little thin black lines that would have been there otherwise. Clearly we're painting onto it. It's not the main focus of the frame, but it is an important feature. The second part there, just to show it's a bit further back, we'll draw in the standard background and then we'll see the difference. So let's do that now. And as you can see, that does stand out more than that, which is what we want because we don't want everything in focus too much. So that's coming along quite nicely. Let's just fill in the rest of it and we'll get on with the final frame.